Yes, a very good evening to all of you. Right, so very busy right now, all of you, right, studying for the exams, but still also looking in, yes, still looking out for some videos on YouTube, something related to audit, some, last minute magic or last month magic, I could call it as, right, some sprinkle, something, where we come to know some important questions or something like that. Okay, so in this particular video, yes, there is an apprehension right now. Okay, COVID-19 related case studies, COVID-19 related questions, right? Audit case studies, right? Are they expected to come? What if such type of questions come in the exam? What are the types of answers to be written? ICAI has also issued a few guidance, few documents regarding how to do the audit under the COVID circumstances. Are those guidance notes applicable for the exams and so far and so forth? Okay, so all the documents which have been issued by ICAI related to COVID, those are not, specified in the list of applicable documents for November 20 exams or for any exams for that matter. Right, so those are not applicable. But yes, should we have an understanding of, or should we have a perspective regarding if those type of case studies relating to, relating to COVID circumstances is asked in the exam, what should be written in, what type of answers, or what all should be included in the answer? Should we have an apprehension and understanding of that? Certainly yes. Okay, right, so with that intention in mind, I thought let me prepare a video, right, in which we could have a brief discussion regarding the same. Okay, so in this particular video, we will be scanning through this. Again, I am using 705 in the beginning itself. I am giving a disclaimer of opinion. Okay, this is not applicable for your exams. Okay, so no writing a mail to me or no spending any, no spreading any rumors or grapevine. Oh, there is a new, document and that is applicable for exams. No, no. It is not applicable, right? But we are just taking it as a base. We are just taking it as a base, as a reference document, that in case if any, such type of questions are coming in the exam, what should be the answers written over there. So I hope I have been pretty clear in communicating that to you. Okay, right. So you might be remembering, in intermediate when you studied audit, or intermediate when you study audit, that earlier there was this manual environment. And then this manual environment, it became the CIS environment, right? The computerized information systems environment. And nowadays, though, it is the automated environment. We talk about the chapter of the special aspects of auditing in an automated environment. And from those times, where you might have heard about the manual environment and then CIS environment and then automated environment, there might have been this one sentence which you would have come across over there, that though the techniques of auditing may undergo a change. The techniques of auditing regarding how you do an audit, that may undergo a change in a CIS environment, in an automated environment as compared to a manual environment. The principles of auditing remain constant. The principles of auditing remain constant. The objective of the auditor to express an opinion on the true and fair view, to obtain a reasonable assurance that financial statements are free from material misstatement, that overall objective of the auditor remains constant. Right, so that time probably would have come across this sentence, that how we do an audit undergoes a change, but why we do an audit, that remains constant. And now I think in the current scenario, I can again apply that same analysis over here in the COVID scenario. Right, so in the COVID scenario, how we do an audit, that might undergo a change, or that has undergone a change, but why we do an audit, that remains constant. There is no change in the objective of the auditor. There is no change in the standards on auditing. There is no change in the audit procedures. And regarding what is that, still you have to obtain the sufficient appropriate audit evidence. You have to perform the audit procedures given in the different standards on auditing. So are you understanding? Just as in manual and automated environment, the techniques of auditing may undergo a change, the principles of auditing remain constant. So similarly, in the pre-COVID world and now in the COVID world, and the techniques of auditing may undergo a change, but the principles of auditing remain constant. Right, so that is one important takeaway which you need to keep it in your mind. And the second one over there, that now say due to this right, due to the COVID, yes, the COVID times, the lockdown and all those, then a containment zone. They say, example, the auditor was not able to attend the physical verification count being conducted by the management. Right, the auditor was not able to get the confirmations from the bank's financial institution. Right, the auditor was not able to inspect, do attend, verify, or do the cash count at the client place, whatever such. Right, so whichever such procedures the auditor was not able to perform. So the analysis is very, very simple. That you try is, what is always our focus in the audit, that you perform the main audit procedure. If main audit procedure not possible, alternative audit procedure. Then let that be any item of the financial statement. And let it be regarding subsequent events or inventory or accounting estimate or related party, whichever item of financial statement. Right, so what you do, you perform the main audit procedure and try to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. By performing the main audit procedure, if you are not able to obtain the evidence, perform alternative audit procedure. Right, and even after performing or trying to perform the alternative audit procedure, you're unable to obtain the sufficient appropriate audit evidence, then that will constitute a limitation on scope and a restriction. आपके हाथ बंधे हुए हैं, there is some restriction on the scope of the audit, limitation on the scope of the audit. And what happens due to a limitation on the scope of the audit? This we study in SA 210 also, no? Agreeing the terms of audit engagement, limitation on scope after acceptance of engagement. Right, after acceptance of engagement, we ask reasons to management, circumstances which necessitated the change, perform alternative procedure to obtain evidence, and still if unable to obtain evidence, two options. One, you modify your opinion, that is either you issue a qualified opinion or a disclaimer of opinion, or second option, that auditor you may also consider withdrawing from the engagement. Right, auditor you may also withdraw from the engagement. So withdrawal is nothing but the resignation of the auditor. Right, so what did I just tell you? Main audit procedure. If not main audit procedure, alternative audit procedure. Yes, to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. And even alternative procedure, you're unable to obtain the sufficient appropriate audit evidence. What to do? Either modify the opinion or withdraw from the engagement. Right, so modify opinion, qualified opinion, or disclaimer of opinion, depending upon the pervasiveness. And a material but not pervasive, qualified, material and pervasive, disclaimer of opinion. Right, or another option, auditor you could withdraw from the engagement and the reasons for withdrawal to be communicated to those charged with governance. Right, so this is just an outline before we get into the discussion of this particular document, which you can see it on the screen. Right, this is just a background. Right, so main audit procedure, if through main audit procedure unable to obtain evidence, alternative audit procedure. Even through alternative procedure unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, qualified opinion or disclaimer of opinion, or auditor you may also withdraw from the engagement. Yes, all good for everyone? Okay. Right, so joint initiative of the Accounting Standard Board and the Auditing and Assurance Standard Board. Right, impact of coronavirus on the financial reporting and the auditor's consideration. Right, so directly we will hit upon the part which is relating to the auditor's consideration. Right, those of you who might have clicked somewhere in between and gone to the further clicks of the video, I'm again repeating it one more time. This document per se is not applicable for your exams. Just for discussion, understanding purpose, we are going through the same forecasting that maybe some case studies may come considering the current scenario. Okay, right, so message: COVID-19, an infectious disease caused by novel coronavirus, is exponentially spreading illness and causing deaths to citizens throughout the globe. Rather, it's a pandemic and has been recognized as a global pandemic by the WHO. The various government are taking drastic measures, including lockdown of entire country to reduce the impact of this catastrophe. You're already aware that these disruptions are hugely impacting business significantly and brings it with it several issues and challenges to prepare assess to the preparers of the financial statement and also to the auditors on various aspects concerning the preparation and audit of the financial statements. Okay, right, so impact on accounting also and impact on the audit also. Right, so now straight away we will go to the impact on the audit. Right, so impact of coronavirus on the audit of the financial statements. So still out of curiosity, if any one of you would like to go through this particular document, one, you can directly download it from the ICAI website, or second, I'll be also uploading it on the www.aartilahoti.com. So you can also download it from there and have it for your reference, keep it for your reference with you. Okay, so impact of coronavirus on the audit of the financial statements, right, for 2020. The global pandemic has already had a significant impact on global trade and economy, with consequential impact on global and Indian financial markets. Rather, my understanding, that economy in the last 4-5 years, to begin with, it started with the demonetization. The first tremors of the earthquake or whatever you say, disruption or whatever, it started with the demonetization. And by the time the people started coming out of, settling with that, okay, now the earlier currency notes have gone, so all the black money, been trying to be taken out from the market and all that, the transition, from the old currency notes to the new currency notes taking place, people just settling in. By that time, GST came in. GST, that new the new GST tax regime, and the new tax regime, and people again returns and a GSTR 9C and GSTR 3 and 3B and all, and a completely change from the service tax and those provisions over there. Right, so they were adopting, they were saying कि नहीं अभी आजकल तो GST applicable है, नहीं अभी तो ज़्यादा रेट बढ़ गया है ना, those type of कि GST है ना. तो पहले it started with demonetization, then after that it became like GST, and then those were the trailers regarding what was coming ahead, so, and then though it was like a complete wipe down of the entire, a complete like a 360-degree change. These, like COVID, demonetization and the GST would have been a 20%, 10%, manageable, 2-3 months ka transition change, whatever. But COVID has been like a blockbuster, and it's like been a blockbuster over there, right? A huge impact. Right, so these three put together, now life is going to be something, economy, you're going to see it in terms of what it was before these three events and what it is after these three events. And anyways, life is nowadays being discussed as pre-COVID era and post-COVID, we are still waiting for it. We are still in the COVID era. So post-COVID, maybe I don't want to scare or anticipate, because the anticipation is like now becoming very tiring. And every time you think, okay, just one more lockdown and done, just one more month and done. Okay, just now it is the vaccine is coming, the final testing and done. But that done is not actually getting done. Something similar to the CA exams which you write. You think, oh, this May and it's done, this November and it's done. Okay, you'll say, ma'am. Don't say ma'am. Yes, you better study hard right now. Okay, right. So this may also have accounting, disclosure, internal control and auditing implication for many entities. There is a great deal of uncertainty as to how COVID-19 will continue to evolve, and the scenario is rapidly changing. Uncertainty arises primarily for interruptions in production, supply chain, disruption, unavailability of personnel, closure of facilities, offices due to rapid outbreak of COVID-19, decline in demand, right, liquidity, business continuity issues, etc. Like, the hotel and the travel and tourism industries and many other industries, to great extent they've been affected. The resultant outbreak, yes, though started outside of India, impacts entities in India as well. Okay, given there are increasing restrictions on travel, meetings and access to client location, auditors would be facing practical difficulties in carrying out the audit. These underlying situation, however, must not undermine the delivery of high quality audit. So that can't be an excuse कि क्या करे, COVID था ना इसीलिए audit नहीं कर पाए. It says no, that's not an excuse. And it says these underlying situation must not undermine, right, the delivery of high quality audits. Audits should continue to be planned and performed in compliance with the auditing standards. And so that's what I told you, no? There is a change in scenario. There is no change brought in any auditing standard. We still write in our audit report that we have conducted our audit in accordance with the standards on auditing specified under section 143.10. Okay, to enable the auditor to perform audits, additional time may be required and alternative audit procedures may be needed to perform the audit in order to obtain the sufficient appropriate audit evidence. I just began with that one. Okay, main audit procedure, अब तुम बोलते हो कि कोविड के कारण main procedure not possible, due to COVID main procedure not possible, then what? Alternative procedure, and alternative also not possible, then qualified disclaimer or withdraw. Okay, right. This document discusses key advisory to auditors related to conditions that may arise as a result of COVID-19. Okay, so which are the matters that they are discussing in this advisory, right? So lots of essays that they are discussing over here, right? So identifying and assessing the risks of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment. Right, so SA 315, because now you have to understand the entity and its environment, you have to understand the COVID environment now. Right, and also the materiality in planning and performing an audit, that is 320. So once you go through this document, it's like a very superb revision of the standards. And it's like a very wonderful revision. Immediately, 320 mein aisa hai, 315 it is like that. Okay, right, assessing financial impact and their reasonable estimation, SA 540. And so lot of retirement benefits, lot of employees, lot of layoffs happening in organization also. So retirement benefit, right? So calculation of that, right? Accounting estimate or any impairment in the value of the assets. And the cash generating capacity of the asset has gone down. So again, determining doing the impairment assessment, even that's going to be an accounting estimate. And evaluation of goodwill, again an estimate, wherever you need to make a judgment of the amount. Right, so that is SA 540, auditing of accounting estimates including fair value accounting estimates and the related disclosures. Valuation of inventory, right, on a date other than the date of financial statement. So that's again given in SA 501, audit evidence specific consideration for selected items. Then audit of CFS, where components or component auditors are located in severely affected places. Right, so subsidiaries or branches are in those locations which are severely affected. So SA 600, using the work of another auditor. Then subsequent events after the reporting date. Right, so after 31st of March, any adjusting or any non-adjusting event, type 1, type 2 event. So that is SA 560. One very big concern which has happened due to going concern for many concerns is regarding the going concern, right? SA 570 and a going concern, right? That is that business, 20 years whatever empire was built, and 30 years, 10 years, whatever wonderful performance in business, whatever growth in the business had been seen, and just the 6 months of COVID had has collapsed the entire business. Right, so it says no audit, nothing. It is directly a going concern issue. No audit procedure, no other implication. It says the entity itself is shut down. Closing down the business. Right, so going concern has become a very, very big concern in this COVID times. Evaluating the work of management's experts. So that is SA 500. Written representations, right? So taking representations from management regarding foreseeable future of going concern, and that how they will come back from this downfall of the business or so. Right, auditor's opinion, forming an opinion, modifications to opinion, emphasis of matter paragraph, other matter paragraph, right? So 700, 705, 706, and next one, key audit matter, 701. Right, nowadays, most of the audit reports of company you see at least an emphasis of matter paragraph or a key audit matter paragraph or both regarding the COVID are there in the audit reports of the company. Right. The auditor's responsibilities relating to other information, 720. Internal control consideration. Why? Because work from home. So whatever controls were put in place at office, those controls were left in office only, and now all the work happening from home. Right. So internal control consideration. Then external confirmations, and a very low response rate to external confirmations in COVID times. And risk of fraud, right? That is SA 240, the auditor's responsibilities relating to fraud in an audit of financial statements. So rather, when you look at this list, ऐसे लगता है कि all these are the very important types of standards, no? All those standards from where lot of case studies come in the exams and those. Okay. Right, so those of you who are still with me, very happy that yes, you are taking interest in this discussion over there. Right, so first one, right? So now first they prepared a list of those 14 different areas which could have an impact, yes, which COVID could have an impact on, and now one by one they've picked each one of them. Okay, right. So now first one, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement. Okay, so now it says risk of material misstatement. Auditor, you could evaluate additional risks arising from the following areas. Operational disruption resulting in any changes to the business model arising from significant drop in demand, right? Reduced customer base, disruption in supply chain, employee absence or work from home, geographical implications of group operation, public lockdown, etc. Right? So operational disruption, contractual non-compliances resulting in contractual breaches. Right, so there was a contract that so much of raw material is to be supplied, so many of goods are to be produced. Now due to the lockdown, all these contracts could not be honored. Right, so contractual non-compliances. Liquidity and working capital issues given the reduced impaired ability to service debt or replenish working capital requirement due to possible lower cash flows. Right, so again unable to repay the bank loan. Asset valuation. Downward asset valuation may trigger legal and compliance issues or lead to liquidity challenge. It's a lot of impairment in the value of assets as well as investments also due to COVID. Right, so in applying SA 315, the auditor should consider the implications of the above matters when obtaining an understanding of entity and environment in light of objectives, strategies and other business risks. So, as a part of understanding the entity and its environment, we also look into the future of the entity, right? And in the future of the entity, we look into what are their objectives, what are their strategies, and what are the related business risks. So, it says now in those business risks, you need to consider these additional risks, right? Additional risks you need to consider. Okay. Right, the auditor should also discuss with those charged with governance and management whether impact of COVID-19 has been incorporated into their risk assessment process. So like one of the component of internal control is risk assessment, right? So whether management has incorporated, right, the risk assessment process, the impact of COVID-19 and their risk assessment process, and how they've identified and assessed the significance of the emerging business risks. The auditor should also consider if disclosures are required in financial statement about the key assumption. Right? And if the auditor has revised the risk assessment as a result, audit materiality may also need to be revised. Right? So audit materiality, can it be revised as the audit progresses? Yes, in the event of becoming aware of any information during the audit that would have caused the auditor to have determined a different amount initially. Can the auditor revise materiality? Yes, the auditor can revise audit materiality as the audit progresses. Right, so revision of audit materiality and consequently it will also lead to the revision of the performance materiality. Okay. Right, so that's the first one, SA 315, okay, additional risks, and now auditor also, yes, you may need to revise the audit materiality. Next one, assessing financial impact and their reasonable estimation. So now they are talking about SA 540. Right, the financial statements of various items which would have been affected by the outbreak of COVID-19. A detailed list of them have been mentioned in the accounting advisory. In order to the detailed list of items mentioned there, specific accounting issues could arise in the following area. Right, so which are the areas where accounting estimates could arise due to COVID-19? It says impairment of goodwill, property, plant and equipment, intangible asset, valuation and impairment of receivable, loans and advances. Right, so for banks, the NPAs would increase. The NPAs have increased. Right, what does it say? Valuation and impairment of receivables or debtors, more provision for bad and doubtful debts to be done, due to COVID. Right, impairment of goodwill, impairment of property, plant and equipment, intangible assets. Then valuation of defined benefit plans and obligation, that is again the retirement benefit, due to significant changes in employee strength or devaluation of underlying plan assets. Right, so whatever underlying plan assets were, yes, the fund was being created in order to pay the retirement benefits to the employees. There could be a devaluation in those underlying assets. Say invested in some mutual funds, and that has hit rock bottom or so. Right. Stock compensation, performance conditions and obligations. So any ESOP commitment given, but now due to COVID again you could not fulfill that commitment or so. Contractual penalties. So non-compliance with contracts might lead to some contractual penalty. Employment termination benefits, so layoff of employees. Insurance recoveries related to business interruption. Right, so you have that professional loss insurance cover, which could also, yes, for any losses suffered, even that insurance cover would have been taken. Right, so insurance recoveries related to a business interruption. Onerous contract provision. Right, so onerous contract is where the cost is more than the benefit. Right, the cost is more than the benefit. So any such onerous contract provision which needs to be done, and allowance for expected credit losses. So what is this? This is just an example of the estimates, which would have, yes, which would be affected by the COVID. The above items are likely to have significant accounting estimates to be made by the management. Significant assumptions, including projected cash flows used in these accounting estimates, may be affected by the impact of COVID-19. Hence, the auditor should use procedures as prescribed by SA 540, check whether the estimates are reasonable and disclosures are adequate. This is the objective of SA 540. The estimates are reasonable and disclosures are adequate. The above procedures include how management has assessed the effect of estimation uncertainty. Those of you who already studied the standards would be easily able to correlate to this term, estimation uncertainty, and the inherent lack of precision in its measurement. And in 540 nowadays, so there are a lot of questions coming regarding degree of estimation uncertainty, high estimation uncertainty, low estimation uncertainty. Those examples are being asked in the exam. Or the risk assessment and audit evidence supporting these estimates and related disclosures that may be affected by the impact of COVID-19 on the business and the environment. Okay, right, so 540. Right, so you will see, it just gives you an understanding. It's not that you are unaware. So no learning as such. You don't need to learn this list, but you just need to be aware. Next one, right, valuation of inventory on a date other than the date of financial statements. Due to government imposed shutdown or due to unavailability of client personnel, it may not be practicable for most of the business entities to conduct physical verification on 31st of March. And so client only could not do the physical verification. So where auditor you are going to go and attend the physical verification count. Right, the auditor must plan procedures depending on the underlying circumstances wherein the inventory count date could be advanced prior to the year end or deferred to a date after the year end. Right, so in SA 501 we always say attend physical verification count on year end date. If not year end date, alternative date. Alternative date also not possible, alternative procedure, and still not able to obtain evidence, then 705. Year end date. If not year end date, alternative date. Or not alternative date also, alternative procedure. Not alternative procedure also, then 705. Right, qualified or disclaimer. Right, so if not able to attend on year end date, attend on an alternative date and additionally check for the intervening transaction. Right, for practical reasons, the physical counting, inventory counting may be conducted at dates other than date of financial statements. Right, the auditor needs to attend, yes, at an interim date or so. Where perpetual inventory system is being maintained, management may perform the physical count. Management or auditor may identify difference between perpetual inventory records and physical inventory records. Right, where this may indicate that controls over changes in inventory are not operating effectively. Okay, right, and attendance at physical inventory count is impracticable. You say year end date bhi nahi, alternative date bhi nahi. है ना. So in some cases attendance at physical inventory counting may be impracticable. This may be due to factors such as nature and location of inventory. For example, where inventory is held in a location that may pose threat to the safety of the auditor, and not only of the auditor but all people around the auditor. And okay, if that particular area, it's some containment zone, or some particular client personnel is already having COVID, and there the auditor says, no, I am very particular about my duties, I need to attend the physical verification count, and he will get COVID, and all the people around him and all the contact tracing will be done. All of them that might also be affected by COVID. Okay, the matter of general inconvenience to the auditor, however, is not sufficient to support a decision by the auditor that attendance is impracticable. That, client is saying that, see, ours is not containment zone or anything. None of our staff is also having any COVID symptoms or any fever or any cold cough or so. So it is absolutely safe. We are doing good monitoring, but only as a precaution, we've made it a policy that whosoever comes to the organization in the inventory department or so in the warehouse of the company needs to wear the PPE kit. So auditor, if you want to come and attend the physical verification count, you can come, but you need to wear the PPE kit, you need to wear the face shield, and then sanitization and all that, and only then come. Now auditor says, no, I can't wear PPE kit and all. So then this is not right. And it says, ye nahi chalega. And so what does it say? The matter of general inconvenience. Auditor says, you don't know, it's so inconvenient to wear PPE kit and all. Right, is not sufficient to support a decision by the auditor that attendance is impracticable. The matter of difficulty, time or cost involved is in itself not a valid basis for the auditor to omit an audit procedure for which there is no alternative, or to be satisfied with evidence that is less than persuasive. Okay, so it says just without no reason you cannot omit an audit procedure. There has to be a very valid and a very strong reason for the omitting of an audit procedure. In some circumstances, when attendance is impracticable, it's a containment zone, auditor, he can't go for attending the count, perform alternative audit procedure. For example, inspection of documentation of subsequent sale of specific items of inventory acquired or purchased may provide sufficient appropriate evidence about the existence and condition of inventory. However, it may not be possible to obtain evidence regarding the inventory even by performing the alternative audit procedures. In such cases, SA 705 requires the auditor to modify the opinion in the audit report as a result of the scope limitation. That's very easy. Year and date, if not alternative date, if not alternative procedure. Still not able to obtain evidence, SA 705. Yes, are you all with me? Yes, all with me? Wonderful. Right, next one. Audit of consolidated financial statements where component or component auditors are located in severely affected places. Right, so subsidiaries, associate, joint ventures, right, those either they are auditors or those entities itself are located in the severely affected places. Right, so the time gap between the consolidated financial statements of parent and subsidiary, right, between the reporting date should not be more than 3 months. Right, then entities to whom Ind AS is not applicable. Right, now the roles and responsibilities of the auditor. In case where the parent auditor is not the auditor of all the components, right, the auditor shall apply the requirements of SA 600 and using the work of another auditor. Right, and now when you are using the work of another auditor, you need to check whether the work of the other auditor is adequate, right, for the principal auditor purpose in the context of the specific assignment. While doing so, the principal auditor should consider how the impact of COVID-19, including travel bans, temporary suspension of business operation, government mandated leaves, etc., may affect risk assessment, materiality, and the ability to obtain the evidence in respect of the component. Right, so now principal auditor, you need to check, yes, that how all these factors have affected the obtaining of the evidence in respect of the component. If principal auditor is unable to obtain adequate information from the component auditor, the principal auditor should give a qualified opinion or a disclaimer of opinion because there is a limitation on the scope of the audit. This I told you in the beginning of our discussion only. and it will constitute a limitation on scope of the audit, which might lead to a qualified opinion or a disclaimer of opinion. Right, so in the current scenario, the alternative means or methods to obtain evidence could be as follows. Can data be shared cross-border to allow for principal auditor for review? Could files be uploaded into cloud-based portal? Can video calls or screen sharing software be used to discuss the work with the component auditor? Can component auditor be asked to complete a detailed questionnaire? Consider the outcome of any prior visits and a pre-COVID visits, right? Prior to COVID, including visits during planning or interim stage, where the work of component auditor was previously reviewed, past work of component auditor, whether there have been significant errors, any detailed memorandum to be provided to component auditor, what work can be done centrally by the principal auditor's team. Right? So it says you can consider performing all these alternative procedures. Right now, when you have to use the work of the other auditor, but that other auditor is in some severely affected places. Okay. Next one, essay 560. Subsequent events or events after the reporting date. And so Ind AS 10 defines them as adjusting event and the non-adjusting events. Right. Also AS 4. Right. Now entities must disclose significant recognition and measurement uncertainty. Disclose means non-adjusting event, type 2 event. Right, recognition and measurement uncertainties that might have been created by the outbreak of COVID-19 in measuring various assets and liabilities. They should also disclose how they have dealt with the impact of COVID-19 on the financial position and the financial performance of the entity. So basically, COVID-19 is a non-adjusting event for the purpose of our audit and a disclosure event. So as an auditor, we need to check, and a type 2 event for the purpose of our audit. Right? So for type 2 events, what do we need to check? Whether the disclosures have been done. For type 2 event, what do we need to check? We need to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence that whether the disclosures have been done. Okay. Right, next one, the responsibilities of the auditor for subsequent events. Right, the auditor shall perform audit procedures designed to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence that all events occurring between the date of financial statements and the date of audit report that require adjustment or disclosure have been identified. Right, so this is the first objective of SA 560. Sufficient appropriate audit evidence for events occurring between the date of financial statements and the date of audit report that require adjustment or disclosure. And what is the second objective of 560? Facts that become known to the auditor after the date of the audit report to respond to those facts appropriately. That had they been known to the auditor on or before the date of the audit report, it may have caused the auditor to amend the audit report. Yes, the auditor shall perform procedures required so that they cover the period from the date of financial statements to the date of audit report and as near as practicable thereto. Right, so what audit procedures? Obtain an understanding of any procedures management has established. Then inquiries of management and TCWG. Reading minutes of the meetings of owners, management, TCWG. Right, reading entities' latest subsequent interim financial statement. And where as a result of procedure, the auditor identifies events that require adjustment or disclosure, the auditor shall determine whether the event is appropriately reflected in those financial statements. And so nothing is what our auditing standards have not made any change. And not big, what do you say, no change in audit procedure, only they've adopted, they have just incorporated also the COVID impact over there, in this particular advisory. Okay, going concern, right? COVID-19 is resulting in significant operational disruption. This was the first additional risk of SA 315, or operational disruption, and presents an existential threat for many business. What a wonderful term, existential threat, and a going concern. Right, so operational disruption and that presents an existential threat for many businesses. Entities and audit teams need to consider the implications of the assessment of going concern and viability in the financial report and whether these circumstances will result in prolonged operational disruption. कि ऐसा और कितने दिन चलेगा? And a prolonged operational disruption which will significantly erode the financial position of the entity or otherwise result in failure. And you might have seen that so many restaurants, so many shops and around you would have shut down due to COVID. And so many, say, these crockery shops or any such, say clothes, or which were mainly working on rental or so, many of these stores have shut down due to COVID. Right, so it will significantly erode the financial position of the entity or otherwise result in failure. This is critically important for the going concern assessment. Auditor will need to consider whether the threat to liquidity as a result of supply-demand disruption presents a material uncertainty. Do you know this term from SA 570? Don't say no. If you say no, then you are disqualified for writing this attempt. You have to know this term. It's just if you're writing the upcoming attempt. Okay. It presents a material uncertainty to the going concern status for 12 months look forward period. Now see, foreseeable future के लिए यहाँ दूसरा term use किया गया है. For foreseeable future, they've used a different term over here. Look forward period. SA 570 also requires auditor to consider events that may cast a significant doubt on the entity's ability to continue as a going concern beyond the period of management's assessment. And those of these students, I won't say my students, any student watching these classes who would have already studied, have a understanding of the standards and the audit procedure, should be finding this wording over here to be very, very familiar. Should be finding these wordings which are being used over here very, very familiar. Material uncertainty, significant doubt about the entity's ability to continue as a going concern beyond the period of management's assessment. With this beyond 12 months or so. Audit team should robustly assess the going concern and viability risk related to COVID-19 threat in compliance with SA 570. So what new terms have we seen over here? Right, what different terms have we seen over here? Significant operational disruption. Significant operational disruption. Existential threat. Right, then we've seen look forward period. Then COVID-19 threat in compliance with SA 570. This includes evaluating whether there is adequate support for the assumptions underlying management's assessment and the consistency of these assumptions across entities' business activity. Right, the management's assessment of the entity's ability to continue as a going concern, right, could be affected by the following factors. Right, the degree of uncertainty associated with the outcome of an event or condition increases significantly the further into the future of an event or condition or the outcome occurs. Right, most financial reporting framework that require an explicit management assessment specify the period for which management is required to take into account all information. So generally it is for 12 months and 1 year after the date of the balance sheet. The size and complexity of the entity and how much it is affected by external factors. And any judgment about the future is based on information available at the time at which the judgment is made. Subsequent events may result in outcomes that are inconsistent with judgments that were reasonable at the time they were made. So it depends upon the latest available information. Right, so what are the responsibilities of the auditor? Auditor, आपका life में सिर्फ एक ही responsibility है क्या? To obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. जैसे students, आपके life में अभी एक ही responsibility है CA final clear करना. That's it. है ना, एकदम कॉन्ग्रुएंस है. मतलब जैसे ऑडिटर का ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है? सफिशिएंट एप्रोप्रिएट ऑडिट एविडेंस. सीए स्टूडेंट का ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है? सीए फाइनल स्टूडेंट है ना, टू क्लियर सीए फाइनल. एंड ऑब्वियसली जो इंटर है उनको टू क्लियर सीए इंटर, है ना. क्लियर ऑब्जेक्टिव इज वेरी क्लियर राइट नाउ. Right, so obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding and conclude on the appropriateness of the management's use of going concern basis of accounting in the preparation of financial statements, and to conclude based on the evidence obtained whether there is any material uncertainty exists about the entity's ability to continue as a going concern. Again, this is the objective paragraph of SA 570. I always tell in my classes that whenever any case study regarding going concern is asked in the exam, this is the first sentence you should write in your answer. And we always highlight these two words over there, na, appropriateness and material uncertainty. Is it right? All right. Okay. These responsibilities exist even if the financial reporting framework used in the preparation of financial statement does not include an explicit requirement. Okay. As described in SA 200, the potential effect of inherent limitation on the auditor's ability to detect material misstatement are greater for future events or conditions that may cause an entity to cease to continue as a going concern. The auditor cannot predict such future events or condition. Arey why auditor? Anybody cannot predict future events or condition. The absence of any reference to a material uncertainty about the entity cannot be viewed as a guarantee as to the entity's ability to continue as a going concern. Yes, there could be several situations arising from the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak that could have had an impact on the assumption related to going concern. For some entities, the impact could be severe and may leave management with no realistic alternative but to liquidate or cease operation. For some entities, the impact could be severe. There could also be entities which may have to scale down their operation while impact may not be significant for others. So what does it say? For some it could be severe, for some they may have to scale down, and for some it may not be significant, right? For other entities, like for telecom companies, right? Rather telecom companies, their data requirement and their data business has increased to multiple and many times. Right, because of work from home, so many people have got Wi-Fi connection. Why only work from home? Yeah, study from home also. And so many online classes and all of that you are attending. Okay, it may not be significant for other entities. It is the responsibility of the management to make the assessment as to whether the entity is a going concern. Right, 12 months. In the current scenario, while making this assessment, management would generally be expected to prepare detailed forecast, which will require regular updation till the financial statements are authorized. Management should consider the impact of COVID-19 on customer, supplier, employees. For example, could the entity continue to operate if employees are not able to be physically present? How reduced cash flow impact its working capital requirement? So work from home, is it viable? How long is it viable? Right, reduced cash flow, still can they continue? Right, working capital requirement. Management should also consider whether insurance policies taken by the entity cover the losses arising from COVID-19. Yes. So what is the first point over there? You check the management assessment. Right? You check the management assessment, and then the auditor will be able to form a conclusion relating to going concern once management has made its own assessment. The auditor should inquire of management TCWG as to what information is available about the future and determine whether there has been appropriately considered. Right? And if events or conditions have been identified that cast a significant doubt, for that you need to check whether there is a material uncertainty. And given the level of uncertainty and the speed of increasing impact of COVID-19, and it has also reached to the president of the country, in the world, right, of a big country in the world, right, audit team needs to critically consider the current position at the point of sign off as a part of subsequent events review right up to the point of signing of the audit report. And if the entity is disclosing in their subsequent event that an estimate of impact cannot be made due to evolving situation, this may result in a material uncertainty on going concern within the audit report. Right, so right now many entities, right, auditor has put a material uncertainty related to going concern para in their audit report. Next one, evaluation of work of expert. Right, so lot of estimation is involved in the preparation of financial statements, and now again due to COVID, right, so it says you may use the work of an expert. And whenever you have to use the work of an expert, you have to check the adequacy of their work. And how do you check the adequacy of the work of the expert? One, you look into the competence, capability and objectivity. That is, one, you do the evaluation of the expert. Right, competence, capability and objectivity. Right, then obtain an understanding of the work of that expert, right? So findings and conclusions, are they consistent with other audit evidence? Assumptions and methods used, are they reasonable? And also the relevance, accuracy and completeness of the source data being used by the expert. Right, so evaluate the appropriateness of that expert's work. So obtain an understanding and also evaluate the appropriateness of that expert's work. Yes. So there is no such big change. It says okay, now due to COVID, you may more have to use the work of an expert. So for that, you do evaluation of expert and then you do evaluation of expert's work. Right, next one, 580, written representation. Right, you also need to take a specific representation from the management in relation to management's assessment of impact from the ongoing outbreak of COVID-19 on the financial statement for 2020 as well as for the reasonable foreseeable future, right, look forward period. Right, so you need to take the written representation from the management. Right, then auditor's opinion. So first they've given the overall objectives of SA 200. Right, auditor should form an opinion, right, on the financial statements considering the principles of 700, 705 and also 570 and material uncertainty related to going concern. The auditor needs to carefully assess the situation, applying professional judgment and professional skepticism and report accordingly. Okay, now there's a wonderful list over there. Some illustrative situations where the auditor may need to express a modified opinion due to COVID-19 are cited below. Right, so some illustrative situation where now auditor you may have to issue a modified opinion due to COVID-19. Right, first one, most important one over there, the auditor is unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Relating to what? Relating to a material component audited by the other auditor. What to do? Qualified or disclaimer. Then financial impact arising out of the COVID-19 outbreak are not accounted or report or disclosed as per the prescribed accounting standard. That means AFRF not complied with. Right. Again, auditor is unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence relating to the impact of COVID-19 in the financial statements and is of the opinion that there are misstatements that are material. Right. The auditor has communicated misstatements to management and TCWG relating to COVID-19 as per SA 450. And you identify the misstatements, you communicate them to management and request to correct. And the management refuses to correct such misstatements that are individually or in the aggregate material to the financial statements. Right, so unable to obtain evidence regarding the components. Right, then unable to, yes, you check that the AFRF, that's not reported, accounted for, disclosed as per AFRF. Next one, it is of the auditor is of the opinion that the financial statements are materials. There are misstatements that are material to the financial statement. Right, or the management is refusing to correct the misstatements which the auditor has communicated. Next one, reporting on key audit matter. Right, communicating key audit matters in the audit report deals with the auditor's responsibility to communicate key audit matter in the audit report. Key audit matters are, what are those? They are those matters that in the auditor's professional judgment were of most significance in the audit of the financial statements of the current period. Is it not a good revision of standards? Are you making a list? Acha, 315, 320, 560, 570, 501, and so many standards we came across, 580. Okay, most significant 700 series in the audit of the financial statements of the current period. Key audit matters are selected from the matters communicated to TCWG. Right, so auditor shall determine from the matters communicated to TCWG those matters that require the significant auditor attention. And how do you determine key audit matter? This is how you determine key audit matter. So again, nothing per se for COVID. It is just the content of SA 701. Areas of higher assessed RMM or significant risk. Significant auditor judgment relating to areas that involve significant management judgment, and effect on the audit of any significant event or transaction that occurred during the period. So what is key audit matter? Those are of most significance. So if you see over here in all the 3 points, the word significance is coming over there. And areas of higher assessed RMM or significant risk. Rather in your RTP number 20, one of the MCQ, there is this question over there. And regarding determining key audit matter. Right, significant auditor judgment relating to areas in financial statement that involve significant management judgment and the effect on the audit of significant event or transaction that occurred during the period. The auditor shall evaluate whether the impact of the disruption caused, see, they could not find any better word, they are saying the disruption, and caused because of COVID-19 to the operations of the entity, that is what we said, operational disruption, and consequential impact on the financial statements would be a key audit matter, and if determined so, the auditor needs to report the same along with how the matter was addressed in the audit. And in description of key audit matter paragraph, we always need to mention two things. One, why it is a key audit matter, and second, how it has been addressed in the audit. Right. Next one, the auditor's responsibilities relating to other information. And what we say, contents of annual report minus financial statements and audit report. All the other financial, non-financial information apart from financial statements and audit report in the annual report is the other information. Right, that's the other information. Number 19, for the first time, they ask the examples of amounts or other items included in other information. And a first time question asked on 720 in the exam. Okay. Right, so again, other information may include amounts or other items. That's what I told you. This was the question asked in number 19. Right, so an entity needs to provide additional disclosures as a part of financial statements annual report with respect to following area. And so now in the annual report of the company, lot of COVID-19 related information would be given. Risk assessment. Entities may elaborate on existing reported risk with respect to calamities or add new ones related to COVID-19. Then management's discussion and analysis will now include, right, analysis of any material, current and potential future impact on operation, financial condition, liquidity, again arising out of COVID-19. And in the notes also there could be some additional disclosure regarding the COVID-19 is any non-adjusting event as per the accounting standard. The auditor is required to READ, we know that, read any other information disclosed in the annual report and consider whether the same is consistent with the financial statements and audit knowledge obtained in the audit. Right, so when I'm going through these, some students might be thinking, oh, that immediately the audit procedure and everything also I need to revise. And so if you think, if the thought is coming to your mind, okay, I need to revise, so you make a note of it. Right, or you pause the video at this point, you look into ka 720 ka content, ke what are the procedure, acha, read the other information, then inconsistency identified, then material misstatement in other financial statements or material inconsistency. Right, then prior to date of report, after date of report, management agrees to change, does not agree to change, and ek baar go through kar lo, go through that and then come over here. Okay. Right, internal control, or you can just make a list and see all of them, together at the end. Right, in case of companies where the auditors have to report on IFC, 143.3I, right, because of the impact of COVID-19, there could be additional considerations that need to be considered as following. Companies may need to implement new internal control or modify existing ICOFR. And the internal controls over financial reporting. Evaluate whether any of the controls is not operating effectively. And so segregation of duties would not have been very effective due to COVID times, right? Due to concerned person, due to illness, quarantine, work from home, isolation, travel inaccessibility, etc. Identify alternate control. Company's ability to close financial reporting process on time. Company's ability to design and implement controls related to selection and application of accounting principle for accounting and disclosure issues arising from COVID-19. So even controls over accounting they are talking about. And controls over accounting. Right? So new internal control, modified controls. Controls may not be operating effectively. Why? Due to, yes, on account of absence of concerned person, due to illness, quarantine, work from home, isolation, travel inaccessibility, etc. Right. External confirmations. And so, yes, generally anyways these third parties, they are very reluctant to reply. And now to on top of that they have COVID ke karan we could not reply. So SA 330, the auditor's responses to assess risk require the auditor to obtain more persuasive audit evidence the higher the auditor's assessment of RMM risk. To do this, the auditor may increase the quantity of audit evidence or obtain evidence that is more relevant or reliable, that is quality or both, quantity, quality, both more, sufficient, appropriate. For example, the auditor may place more emphasis on obtaining evidence directly from third parties or obtaining corroborative evidence from a number of independent sources. 330 also indicates that external confirmation procedure may assist the auditor in obtaining evidence with high level of reliability that the auditor requires to respond to significant risk. Right, so anyways, external confirmations is considered to be one of the most reliable evidence which can be obtained by the auditor. Essay 240, so it says 330 also says that where risk is more, you need to obtain more persuasive evidence, increase the sufficiency and appropriateness of audit evidence. Right, external confirmation do give you a higher level and a high level of reliability. Then 240 indicates that auditor may design confirmation request to obtain additional corroborative information as a response to address the RMM whether due to fraud at the assertion level. Then 500 indicates that corroborating information obtained from a source independent of the entity such as external confirmation may increase the assurance of the auditor obtained from evidence existing within the accounting records or from representations by management. That is when you are able to corroborate. Okay, and now finally coming to essay 505. And first 330, then 240, then 500, now 505. External confirmations provide guidance regarding the process of seeking external confirmation and evaluating the results of the process. Due to impact of COVID-19, it is more likely that this key audit procedure, which provides significant independent audit evidence, may be ineffective. It says ये इतना महत्वपूर्ण जो audit procedure है, it may be ineffective. It is more likely that this key audit procedure, which provides significant independent audit evidence, may be ineffective due to inadequate responses or non-responses to the confirmation request sent out. Inadequate response. You said balance bhi confirm karna, statement bhi bhejna, but they only confirm the balance. They did not give you the statement. So that's inadequate response or non-response, no reply at all, and no response at all. Right, so if the auditor identifies factor that gives rise to the doubt about the reliability of the response to a confirmation request, the auditor shall obtain further evidence to resolve those doubts. If the auditor determines that the response to a confirmation request is not reliable, right, the auditor shall evaluate the implications on the assessment of RMM, including the risk of fraud and on the related nature, timing and extent of other audit procedure. ऐसा similar sentence हम लोग लिखते हैं when we talk about that favorite question of the institute, which is regarding management's refusal to allow the auditor to send a confirmation request. है ना? Management's refusal to allow the auditor to send a confirmation request. Right, so consider the implications on the auditor's assessment of RMM, including the risk of fraud and the nature, timing and extent of other audit procedures. And in case of non-response, the auditor shall perform alternative audit procedure. So simple. Main procedure not possible. Alternative also not possible. 705. That is the crux of the story. And that is the crux of our discussion today. Okay, examples of alternative procedures could be for debtors, examine specific subsequent cash receipt, shipping documentation, sales near the period end. For creditor, examining subsequent cash disbursement or correspondence from third party, other records such as good received note, etc. The nature and extent of alternative audit procedures are affected by the account and assertion in question. A non-response to a confirmation request may indicate a previously unidentified RMM. In such situation, the auditor may need to revise the assessment of RMM and modify planned audit procedure. Right? Fewer responses to confirmation requests than anticipated or a greater number of responses than anticipated. You know, तुमने सोचा था कि at least 10 debtors should reply, but only one has replied. And a few responses to confirmation than anticipated. Or you had expected that 10 should reply and 1000 have replied. And what do you say? 50 have replied. Greater number of responses than anticipated may indicate a previously unidentified fraud risk factors that requires evaluation in accordance with SA 240. Right, so that is regarding external confirmation. And then coming to the big one over there, fraud. Right, so an auditor conducting an audit in accordance with essays has to obtain a reasonable assurance that financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. Owing to the inherent limitations of an audit, there is an unavoidable risk that some material misstatements may not be detected, even though if the audit has been planned and performed in accordance with the essays. And the auditor shall maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit, recognizing the possibility that a material misstatement due to fraud could exist, notwithstanding the auditor's past experience of the honesty, integrity of management TCWG. And so this is general database of 240. Now, the impact of COVID-19 on business could be very significant and could put pressures on the management to meet performance target or market expectations. So that's actually a fraud risk factor over here. And a FRF, fraud risk factor in SA 240. This raises the risk of likelihood of fraud. That's what I said. It's a fraud risk factor in the financial statements to a higher level, which requires the auditor to exercise a much higher degree of skepticism and carry out extended audit procedures to eliminate the possibility of fraud or material error in financial statement. Right, in carrying out the audit for 2020, auditors must be particularly mindful of the heightened risk of fraud. What a term! And particularly mindful of the heightened risk of fraud, and particularly alert of the increased risk of fraud. That would have been more simple and normal. And particularly alert of the increased risk of fraud, but they've said it particularly mindful of the heightened risk of fraud and comply with the guidance provided by 240. Right, and then the conclusion to all the discussion. The impact of COVID-19 on the economy, financial markets and entities in particular continue to evolve. The role of auditor at times like this is under increased scrutiny. That's exactly the correct thing, as the auditors have a public interest obligation to complete the audit work in accordance with standards and ethical requirements. So that's what I said. Now, your principles of auditing have not undergone a change due to COVID. Under the current circumstances, the auditor must recognize that the manner in which they conducted the audit in the past may need significant modification to address the challenges and uncertainties arising out of the impact of COVID-19. Auditors should exercise a very high degree of skepticism and be prepared to call out where the company's narrative that the board present is not specific enough and does not tell the whole story. And they are hiding information from the auditor of the various scenarios and level of uncertainty specific to the company operation. Irrespective of the challenges and uncertainty, there should not be any dilution or non-compliance with the auditing standards in carrying out the audit. So as an audit teacher, I feel very happy when I read this. There should be no dilution, no non-compliance with the auditing standards in carrying out the audit. And so it says whatever, COVID, no COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, auditing standard evergreen. Okay, right, so irrespective of the challenges and uncertainties, there should not be any dilution or non-compliance with the auditing standards in carrying out the audit. Okay, right, so I hope this discussion has been beneficial. I've already mentioned it twice and I'm mentioning it one last time. Okay, this particular document as such is not applicable for your exams, but just for our understanding purpose, to be updated regarding the latest, aware regarding the latest situation and how it could be expect some related case studies in the exam. We just went through the document once. Right, so keep studying well. I'm waiting for your success mails to reach to me in the month of January. So for your success mail to reach to me, right, you have to work hard right now. Right, so study well and I wish you all the very best for your exams. Thank you so much.